Here we go. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe the channel. It's only one click. That's all. It helps me. It helps actually you because I can continue this if you do that. So please subscribe and so much welcome to Algorytmi, Michael Gottfried, a guy who has set up thousands of interviews, most of them for me, but very rarely you are being interviewed. Is that right?
Yes, and it's an honor.
Yeah,
it's an honor. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Like always, well, let me introduce you first. You are the press guy at Act Music. You've been doing that for many years, and nowadays you do even more than the press relationship. Maybe you could tell all the things you do in Act at the moment.
Yeah, I started 15 years ago, and it was really. Like a lot of people in the industry, I come from being a musician.
Yeah,
and I got a jazz education. I till this day, I think I'm a solid drummer. And but
yes, you are. I've seen the clips.
Thank you. Yeah. But I just felt that I don't know the more professionalized it got, and the more it was I have to, and not that I want to do, and I need to do this, and it just lost its easiness and its joy. So I decided to do something else, and I thought, okay, I don't know anything else but music, and I don't there's nothing I care about more than this, and so I thought, maybe I get in this industry, and Act was just on top of my list.
Yeah,
and I really bothered them, really bugged them. It took me 3 attempts to convince them to give me a shot, but now it's 15 years from them.
Yeah,
from that time, and I started as a publicist for Germany, and then it got Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and then why don't we try a little bit stuff abroad, UK, America, and it kind of extended, and it's a common thing. It's probably one of the good things on the internet, like my media list and the amount of people I talk to is like 2,000 journalists from around the world, that with each single one of them I had some kind of contact.
Yeah.
But very few of them I have ever met.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, public relations since now 15 years. Mm-hmm. We do have other people doing PR for us, but I basically can do it more or less everywhere, and then through my music background, and since I know our artists so well and got a good relation with them, I do some A&R stuff, artist and repertoire.
Yeah,
and I also do some marketing. It's all one world, and I think it also makes a lot of sense because it's just different sides of the same thing.
That's right. And Act is known for, of course, great music and surprising artists and releases, but the press thing is really great. I mean, the Act releases get much more press coverage than the others. But let's go to the music. We come back to your job after. It's always music first. So as always, I ask the guests to select 2 or 3 things you want to talk about, and all of the guests say always that it's so difficult to pick up just a few things, but your list is in a charming way very European based. I love it. Your number 1 selection, Michel Petrucciani, Best of Both Worlds. I didn't know this album.
For real?
I didn't know this album with the horns and I thought I knew everything Michel Petrucciani have done, but this was new to me. But for you, this was your first jazz album, right?
It was my first jazz album. There was a TV show, a talk show on German television, Wilhelmsens Woche.
Yeah.
And the guy, a super intellectual writer, talk show host, he was big friends with Michel, and he had him open the TV show playing Cantaloupe Island on the piano.
Okay.
My father watched that. My father was a very educated guy, and I was instantly, first of all, fascinated by that song, that wonderful melody, that groove, that everything.
Yeah.
And then of course that guy, Petrucciani. I honestly, I didn't think he could play the piano like this.
That's right.
And it instantly got me. And then I went to I'm from a little town in the east of Germany, and I went to the city center and buy this. And I played it so often it fell apart, and I had to buy it a second time.
How old were you then?
15, 16. I wanted to be intellectual and smart, and I was a little cocky at that time. It fit to what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But it was also, it's Steve Gadd on drums, Anthony Jackson on bass, Michel Petrucciani on the piano. And when I look at it, and I can sing along with every note of every solo.
Yeah.
And it was like, to me, it was like Paris and New York at the same time. It has so many colors. There's some heartwarming ballads.
Yeah.
Gadd plays so directly and so simply, but just also so odd. It's so hard to say what it makes so special.
Yeah.
It's got everything, and I can still listen to that thing.
Yeah, that's right. It's the perfect rhythm section. It really is, and it's very rare that the acoustic piano and electric bass work well together. But these three guys make it work, and the horns are just a fun extra, and So you discovered Michel Petrucciani on a TV show.
On a TV show, and the guy was really popular in Germany. He was on magazine covers and stuff. And fun fact on the side, this is a Dreyfus Petrucciani record, and ACT used to distribute the Dreyfus records at that time. There was Petrucciani at Blue Note, and there was Petrucciani at Dreyfus, and I think he made all the great stuff on Dreyfus.
That's right.
Same as the Marcus Miller records, everything came out through ACT in Germany.
Yeah. Youngsters, if you don't know who Michel Petrucciani is, please check him out.
Oh, absolutely.
Incredible talent who we lost too early. I think he was in his late 30s when something happened, but just to see him play, check out a video clip where Michel Petrucciani plays. I mean, it seems physically impossible that a guy with that height and that kind of body structure could even play the piano, and he has special pedals right under the keyboard because he's too small to reach to the normal pedals, and it was really smart to say Paris-New York combination. He really had the European, the French flavor in everything he played, especially in the composing part.
I can nerd out on him forever. Like there is this groove also in his playing. He plays those repetitive patterns that just get more and more intense. There's this incredible melody. There's melancholy. There's so much character, and there's a great movie about him. And everybody who knew him says that he was just so hungry for life.
Yes,
he was living it to the fullest, and you can feel this. I think he had a big heart. He would tell the dirtiest jokes. He would drink everybody under the table. He was always the last one still standing.
That's right.
And you can just feel this incredible, vibrant character.
That's right.
It's so touching and so energetic.
Yeah, I saw him live at Blue Note, New York, and the bass player Ronnie McClure. He used to carry him around. He was like a lap dog. Well, your second selection, and this I'm sure you have lots of stories to share. Dolores in a Shoe Stand from Live in Hamburg, and this is also my favorite Esbjörn Svensson composition. So great tune in D major, very very rare key in jazz, and such a great version in live in Hamburg. So Dolores in Shoe Stand, EST.
They were my favorite band.
Yeah,
and they when I first heard this, I know it was at a jazz workshop when somebody played me a pirated CD of pirated act CD.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that jazz would be like that. And I think for many people it was the same. And again, there's this incredible groove. Like what made EST great, I don't even think it's the electronics or that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But what make it great was the grooves and these dynamics that just went up and up and up collectively.
Yes.
And Esbjörn's killer melodies.
Yes.
And melodies not only in the stuff that was written out, but in his improvisation. I couldn't believe it that everything that the guy played was created on the spot, and you could take parts of the solos and write them down and make new songs out of that. He had such an incredible ability to build melodies.
Yes.
And this piece particularly, I mean, to me, like Live in Hamburg, the double album, for many people, it's a highlight in the EST catalog because it was even more dynamic than the records. I mean, the studio albums were. And it's so incredible how this particular piece starts with that minimalist groove, which is something that Magnus is super good at.
That's right, yeah.
And he's such a distinct drummer. I mean, no one plays like him.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody messes around. Everybody are in the box, but so creative and so melodic, and it's really it's easy. It's easy to listen, but it's not easy listening.
and it takes off so well. I mean, they just fly. You know, and they're so tight, and I just heard them recently, I mean, Don and Magnus, and there seems to be this kind of muscle memory when they play those grooves that they immediately lock with each other.
That's right.
And this band, I mean, it was just unlike anything else, and everybody loved it. All my friends loved it when I played it to them. People instantly loved it when they saw it on stage. I met Esbjörn only once, but he died before I started working at ACT, but I worked with them at a festival. And the quick anecdote would be, I was just the guy driving the van to pick them up from the airport. And they didn't sleep. Like, they came from, I don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
They didn't sleep. It was noon. They were so nice and so friendly. Like, Esbjörn introduced himself to me as I wouldn't know who he was, you know.
Yeah.
And I drove him to the venue. It rained all day. Soundcheck was basically pressing 3 keys on the piano.
Yeah.
In the evening, the band sounded like from the record. It was the best piano sound ever.
Wow.
I had to go to bed after half of the set because I had to drive them to the airport again at 4 a.m.
Oh shit! Yeah.
They didn't sleep again. When they came to the van, they were as friendly. No one was complaining.
Yeah.
I was dying because I was so tired.
Yeah.
I drove them to the next airport. They flew somewhere else, played the next mind-blowing concert.
Yeah.
So I guess they didn't sleep for 3 days. And they were at the top of their game. They were so super nice.
Yes, that's the story of a touring jazz musician. No sleep most of the time. And these were the days when I was in contact with Esbjörn. I tried to get him to play the Mozart double piano concerto with me in Finland. And first he liked the idea. Actually, he said he loved the idea, but then the schedule of the trio got in the way, and right after that, his death got in the way. So we lost him also too early. Where would they be nowadays? What do you think? If Esbjörn would be alive? I mean, they were really on their way to be the biggest group in Europe. Maybe they were the biggest group in Europe with the last years. Do you think they would have reached the stadium level?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There seems to be like a natural limit to even the biggest jazz acts. Like like the Philharmonic halls seem to be like in Germany. That's like the 2,000 seat places.
Yes,
and that's a great size.
Yeah,
and I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're still popular.
Yeah.
Like the repertoire is super popular. I'm very glad to have worked on several of Don's and Magnus records, on several live albums, on the solo album.
Yeah.
And you can see that people still are very connected with it. And it's also this kind of music that influence people even if they don't know it. Like there's people who say no bass player would play if like they do if Jaco Pastorius wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's nonsense, you know. But even people who don't know the guy are influenced by him because he made an influence on the instrument.
That's right.
And with Esbjörn, you know, it was the same on the way jazz trios work. And so his influence is still present. And I mean, it's hard to make those predictions, but I'm sure they would still be very successful, and they would play up to these like Philharmonic hall-sized venues, and of course all the festivals. Yeah. But that seems to really be the limit, and it's a great accomplishment. But you know, Gregory Porter or Till Brönner here in Germany, or Niels or Michael Volney. You know, also the bigger American Diana Krall, and you know, they don't make it beyond this size. But I think it's also a question of listening habits.
That's right.
And I also feel like bigger open airs, it does happen. But for this kind of music, like for a piano trio, I don't think it gets better when it's in front of 5,000.
No, it doesn't. It's not the music for stadiums.
Actually, a lot of the best concerts I ever saw were in 200-seat venues.
That's right. Intimate. That's what jazz
doesn't pay that well, but
that's right.
But I saw Paul McCartney at the Olympic Stadium here, 40,000 people.
Yeah.
Was it impressive? Yes. You know, it was like, okay, there's Paul McCartney. Yeah. Wow, there's Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
I need to take a picture. There's Paul McCartney. Was it touching? I mean, Blackbird, yes. I mean, how can it not be touching?
Yeah.
But there's also so much more going on. Like in places like this, there's so much distraction.
That's right. Sometimes you hear the audience.
Often the sound sucks.
Yeah. Planes flying over. Yeah. I completely understand you. Your third selection, Nowhere. This was new to me. I mean, of course, I know who Lewis Cole is, but that's some interesting stuff.
Did you listen to it?
Yes, I did.
Tell me how honestly how you feel about it.
Great grooves, a great singer, very interesting stuff. Well, maybe a little too electronic for my taste because I'm the acoustic guy, but is this like a well-known group? It's
a nerd kingdom.
Okay.
And it's a musician's thing. And to me, like Nowhere is basically a duo with a drummer, songwriter, producer, videographer, poet, performer Lewis Cole, and Genevieve Artadi, who's a singer, songwriter, performer. And for me, it's like the culmination, like the maximum you can do in a DIY setting.
Yeah.
I mean, besides that, they're just kick-ass musicians in every respect. They make the greatest videos. They have the greatest production. They write the most interesting lyrics. But other than a lot of those, you know, like musicians, there's such a big human element in that. Like there's a lo-fi aesthetic in that makes it so, I don't know, makes it warm to me.
Yeah.
I mean, the playing is unbelievable. There's a tightness in. I mean, the guy plays the drums. Like, even if you can technically play it, it will not sound like him. There's this kind of touch that he has. You can't copy the guy.
Yeah.
And then there's also this incredible mixture of like this. They act very cool also on stage, but if you know people who work with them, they're the sweetest people on the planet. And there's always also a fragile element in that. It's always about trying and failing and ultimately succeeding. And there's videos, you have to look at the videos, like a lot of the stuff was recorded in the guy's house.
Oh,
and there's a choir in the driveway, and there's an orchestra in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it's just so incredible that they've been able to pull this off, and that the bottom line is everything that they do is impossible.
Yeah.
Like none of this should be possible.
Okay.
But they just make it possible by sheer determination.
Yeah.
And it's impressive as hell, and at the same time it touches me no end.
Okay. And the group is called Nowhere, and the album is Nowhere Forever.
Nowhere Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a lot of great albums. Lewis Cole also made a lot of great albums, but this is, to me, it's the top of their game. It's the best they ever did.
Yeah.
Like both of them.
But they're not on Act.
No, I used to have a little contact with him, and there's a link through some people we work with, Tim LaFave, for example, Michael Volney.
Yeah. He's on bass on this.
No, he plays with Nowhere sometimes.
Okay.
But they're just totally independent.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, releasing their own.
They release with Brain Feeder.
Okay.
But I think they control 100%, and they just don't compromise. They're so courageous. They're so good musicians. It's so unique. To me, it fulfills all my desires.
Okay. Your last selection makes me blush because it's one of my albums.
Yes,
Lost Heroes. Just briefly tell why you wanted to include this. I mean, it's heartwarming. But you had it on your wedding.
Yes. It's not. I didn't.
And you're still married.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't pick it for political reasons, for sure. It was the first. It's now almost. I don't know. It's like 13, 12 years ago, maybe. It was the first time when we met. And you know it, but the viewers might not. It's a collection of songs you wrote for your idols who are not there anymore, including Esbjörn, including Jaco Pastorius.
And Petrucciani.
Yeah. And it's just so great instrumental songwriting. They're just songs, and it's not a tribute album. It's just so much more creative, not to play their stuff, but to play something for them.
Yeah.
I think it was one of your biggest successes. It made me very happy to be a small part of that.
It's my first ACT album, and it's my best-selling ACT album. Yeah.
And with right, it says so much about you. It's so diverse, but at the same time, it's very round. It tells a story. It's super emotional. There's killer melodies in there. There's killer harmonies. It's touching no end, but it's also not overly sentimental. Like you don't want to commit suicide afterwards. There's always
unless
some
you
kind
really
of,
have to.
Yes, then you always find a good reason.
Okay, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. Now Nico is coming. I let him in. Yeah. Because it's time to read a little message from the sponsor. Now you can rest your baritone voice and have a drink. Genelec, leader in professional audio solutions, is proud to partner with Algorytmi podcast. At Genelec, we blend art with science and engineering to deliver exceptional audio solutions that improve every listening experience. We are proud to support discussions that explore the fascinating world of music and beyond. That's Genelec. You know the Genelec speakers.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, everybody knows them. All right. Tell everything we need to know about your work. You mentioned you have hundreds of journalists that you are in contact. You don't meet them face to face too often. are they difficult to reach, or are they just active every time they get a mail from you? Is it difficult to get press coverage for jazz? How does it work?
I mean, generally, it's not much talked about that there's even people like me. I mean, a lot of people who are not musicians, who are not in the industry, they don't know that. But like every organization needs people to establish a connection with the outside world. And also for me, it's not only journalists. It's just people that we think should know about our stuff. Like I write to actually quite a few people that I don't think there's immediate coverage.
Yeah.
Or there's just people on the list who we think just generally should hear this.
Yeah.
And so every organization, every bigger organization has people like me. I guess you would call it publicists or communication manager or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just I try to be the connection to the outside of the organization. And
you send the music,
Yeah, I mean, send the music, send information, establish direct contact.
Yeah.
I think the key to do this job is to know the other side.
Yeah.
Because if you're just randomly sending out stuff to random people, it's just spam.
Yeah.
And this is also what I'm trying to tell, when I talk about this to musicians or, just to other professionals. All journalists need stuff to write about.
Yes.
All concert promoters need acts that they book.
Yeah.
And if you know what they're looking for, you give them something interesting. You stop being someone who just sends out random stuff, but you kind of establish a partnership.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm trying to do. And another thing that people often think is, like, I argue a lot with journalists. They tell me, "Oh, this sucks," and I tell them, "No, this is great." I hardly ever did that. It's also kind of respectless.
Yeah.
It's really not so much about like making people like stuff, like directly. It's more like making an offer.
Yeah.
And presenting people with the right information.
Yes.
And giving the right stuff to the right people. And this takes a while to get right.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm trying. Just really be a partner for everybody who writes about music, who does radio shows, who does podcasts, who does programs.
Yeah.
And I think it's important.
Yeah, it is. It's extremely important, and I mean the jazz media is quite strong in Germany, but it's not as strong as it used to be. Am I right?
It is quite on the same level, and Germany has a pretty unique media landscape. But it's also the jazz media is where we never stop there. Like our artists, our releases, there are in general media up to the biggest magazines. They're on the television news, on TV talk shows, on the biggest online media. It's really about, I think well, first of all, what I said, identify the right people, who really care about that.
Yeah.
And then tell a good story.
Yeah.
And then it's not so much about jazz anymore. Like, is it jazz or is it not jazz? Is it, then there's something more to tell than than the actual music. It might be a personal thing. It might be like when we released this Esbjörn Svensson solo record, which was discovered 10 years after his passing.
Yeah,
that was just a great story, and that went up to the New York Times, to Der Spiegel, to Heute Journal, which is the evening news.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter that much if it's jazz or not. It's just interesting, great music. It's interesting stories.
That's
Ultimately,
right.
It's about storytelling.
That's right. If you would have a couple hundred jazz musicians here now listening you, and probably eventually you have, what would you say to them regarding the story of the album? Do you wish that the composer, the leader, the guy or girl whose name is on the album would work their story before the release or after the recording. Does the story help your job? And in order to get more press coverage for the album,
it helps the whole thing.
Yeah.
And what we get a lot, or what journalists get a lot, is studied there, played those festivals, won those awards, and this is so incredibly boring. And what I often say is tell it. Just write it down in your own words, like you would tell a friend. Like if somebody would ask you, "Hey, what kind of music you make?"
Yeah,
you would never start with, "Well, I studied there, and newspaper XYZ said this, and I won several awards and performed at those festivals." Yeah. You would never give anybody the answer. You would say, "I come from this and this world, and that and that might have made me do what I do, and maybe there's a certain topic of an album, like there's always something."
Yeah.
And actually that's a very fun process for me, especially with new artists.
Yeah.
To really sit down and talk with them and kind of figure out what is this.
Yeah.
And there's always something.
Yeah.
Like everybody has a story. Everybody comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
And you just have to dig a little bit to find it. Sometimes it's very obvious.
Yeah.
Like with Esbjörn Solo, and sometimes people tell me, there's really not anything special about me.
Yeah.
There's always something special. Everybody has their own.
Yeah, of course.
And it doesn't even have to be big, It can be little things. Like that's such a cliche. But I worked with a Scandinavian singer, and the big deal was her love for nature. I mean, obviously that's the one Scandinavia cliche. Yeah. But if it's true,
but it's true. It's true.
And if the music reflects that, that already opens a world you're in. It's much more than one award studied there.
Yeah. So the story helps the artist, the story helps the journalist, and in the end it helps the label and everybody, and the promoter. The artist gets more press. So
it also helps the listener.
Yeah.
I mean, not every music needs context, but it sure helps.
Yeah.
It reveals something that was maybe not so obvious, and gives you a direction. Okay, this is the world we're in.
Yeah, that's right. One other job you have on ACT nowadays is listening demos and finding new exciting artists, and maybe going on gigs and see them. What are you looking for when you're looking for new talent? I know it's a broad question.
No.
But yeah.
I mean, I think what interests us most is to I mean, like, first of all, we see jazz really as a vocabulary, as a way of expressing yourself, and we're just looking for new colors and new stories to tell within that vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it's funny, there's still stuff that hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
We now release an album with Joel Lissarides, Swedish piano player.
Yes, I know.
Who has Greek roots, and he plays with a bouzouki player. That's a string instrument from Greece. Yeah. And to my knowledge, it has never been done before. And it's absolutely stunning. And
Jazz Rausch Big Band is also
jazz
something.
Jazz Rausch Big Band, jazz meets techno meets big band.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't always have to be that apparent. Like it doesn't have to be, not everything has to be a reinvention, a new invention of anything.
Yeah.
But just tell your own story with your own background in a way that it hasn't been told a million times before. Like when you listen to our releases, you will hardly hear like straight ahead modern jazz, not because we don't like it, but just because we feel it has been done a lot. We had this young piano player, Johanna Summer from Germany, and she played solo. When we first heard her, she played jazz standards, and she played incredibly well.
Yeah.
And it was, and then afterwards we thought, what kind of record should we make? And we really thought together, is there anything else? Like, is there any kind of your personal standards, and we ended up with Schumann Kinderszenen. And that helped so much. I think it was just different. Again, it was a fantastic story.
Yeah.
She's German. She grew up with that.
Yes.
There's something distinctively German in that.
Yeah.
Something that probably hadn't been done before much.
Yeah.
And it was still her. It was her vocabulary. It was her way of playing the piano.
That's right.
So I think this is a good example and it was mutual. It was not us telling her, do this.
Yeah.
It was more like us asking, isn't there something else, something more more personal?
Yeah.
It worked out incredibly well, and she's made it kind of her brand to do these improvisations over classical themes.
That's right. This is actually really important stuff for young upcoming jazz artists to hear, because I think there is no jazz school in the world that the sentence "just tell your story" is heard. I mean, it's not encouraged in the school while you are educating yourself. It's not about your story. It's about this vocabulary of jazz and trying to get that down. But when you get to the real world, when you start releasing your albums, your story is important. So this might come as a surprise for young players.
I hear it all the time, and I unsuccessfully auditioned for university study in jazz, and there were people like drummers who brought a double bass drum pedal to the auditions.
Okay.
And I would be so curious if I would be the committee to see what they would do. But it was like, you can leave that outside. You don't need that here.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big mistake in Germany, and I guess in Europe, you can either study classical or jazz.
Yeah.
So if you want to do popular music, you have to study jazz, and you get squeezed through that system, playing standards, transcribe solos that are 60, 70 years old. Nothing wrong with that, Play big band, but I think in some way it pushes people in a direction and almost brainwashes them towards, this is I want to do this, but at the same time they have to do it. And we spoke about Magnus Öström. I don't know his exact biography, but nothing that he plays sounds like it's a transcribed, I don't know, Elvin Jones thing. And I'm sure he knows Elvin Jones.
And respects him.
But he's so great because he does stuff totally differently.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what you're looking for. If there's a new European group that plays traditional American mainstream in a great way, great solos, virtuotic stuff, but they are heavily in the tradition, that's not what you're looking for, is it?
It has been done, and I also, the focus on Europe is not deliberate in the way that we don't want Americans. It's just where we're based.
Yeah.
And it's what we know best. And I mean, you can play any type of music if you get into it.
Yeah.
Like there's Japanese salsa bands who do it perfectly. It's not. I think if you get deep enough into stuff, like we got this trumpet player from Ghana, Peter Samoa, who plays his high life music. It's jazz, Afrobeat, and funk.
Yeah.
And his whole band is Dutch.
Yeah.
They're Dutch white guys.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem to care at all. And the guys played well because they got into it.
Yes.
And you can swing if you're Polish, and you can play Afro-Cuban grooves if you're Norwegian.
That's right.
You only have to get into that stuff. It's a vocabulary. You have to learn that.
Yeah. Next time I get really depressed, I'm gonna put some Japanese salsa music on. That's gonna keep me going.
and if you want to do that kind of stuff, do it. I don't even want to get into can Europeans swing and can Americans play classical or whatever. Everybody can play everything if they just get deep into it and learn the vocabulary. But at the same time, it's really interesting to hear new stories told through the jazz vocabulary.
That's right,
Or
yeah.
just stuff that hasn't been done that much before.
Yeah.
And there always seems to be maybe not a total reinvention, but just new colors and new facets. And the second thing, just briefly, I think we're looking for stuff that is, for music that is accessible and deep at the same time.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
Do you think there will be labels in 20 years? Or where do you see ACT in 20 years? Some people say that we don't need labels. I certainly hope that we do need labels, because otherwise we wouldn't have a guy like you taking care of the press and communication. But what do you think? Where are we heading?
I think it changes all the time, and we are really going towards a 360-degree model. So we do label work, digital and physical. We do publishing, we do PR, we do marketing, we do bookings, concert curation. There, for sure, there will be institutions that connect artists with the public. And the media, they do it through, it's classical media, their own channels, concerts. Social media, that's constantly evolving. But what we see is, even with the most DIY artists, at a certain point, is, first of all, it's exhausting to do everything yourself. And then there's whole jobs, like whole careers built on doing this kind of communication, to this kind of networking, to do storytelling. It's almost impossible to do it on your own for your whole career.
That's right.
I mean, a lot of people do it when they start out, and I think it's a good thing.
To learn.
So they're educated, they know what's possible and what's not. But everybody, even the most DIY acts like Wolfpack, for example, I mean, everybody has their infrastructure. Even if they do it differently. But I think you need supporters, you need partners, you need a team. And these kinds of institutions, as ACT is one, they certainly are needed for that.
That's right. One of the subjects you wanted to talk about is AI, artificial intelligence, and everybody talks about artificial intelligence nowadays. I would actually, I would love to hear more stories about the real the human intelligence. But let's talk about the artificial intelligence, which in many ways are threatening the music business. What are your thoughts on AI at the moment?
Of course, it's a big subject, but it's also something that I'm constantly thinking about. I think everybody who is doing creative stuff is thinking about it. And when I talk about stuff like influence, like Michel Petrucciani or Esbjörn, there was always more than just the notes those people played. It was their whole story. Not even that I would know it, but their story playing through the music. And my feeling is, I really don't want to make predictions. It's more an expression of what I hope. I think there's going to be, and it's already happening, that there's a mainstream of music that's probably going to be fed more and more with non, like, human-made stuff in one way or the other. And the kind of like the way the pop songwriting and the music production worked was already going towards that direction. There was not so much about authorship, but rather about a team of 12 people creating a song. And then you run it through Pro Tools, and then you program some beats, and then you like. I read that Billie Eilish, what is it? Like one of her songs that has, it's 2.5 minute song, consisted of like 40 vocal takes. The vocals were built together, and I'm not even saying it's wrong. It's just I'm saying this is one tendency of creating music for the mainstream market, but I feel much more at home in the other 1%.
Yeah.
And like jazz, whatever that is today, it was never a big thing. It was always for the 1%, and that's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
For the 1% who wanted something different.
Yeah.
And I feel much more at home in a musical world where there's a story, where there's personality, where there is authenticity and just real emotion.
That's right. Yeah. And then there are these all these questions that if you put out music made by artificial intelligence, will there ever be a fan base for that? And where do the rights go? Where do the royalties go? But obviously, I mean, if somebody sends act music a demo that here is my artificial intelligent jazz thing, this is probably not the right firm for that.
No. I think the stuff you mentioned is more content than it is art.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were also really pissed off by Spotify's CEO, like saying to create content is as cheap as it ever was.
Yeah.
I don't want content.
Yeah.
Content is just some data pushed through some channels to generate some kind of income. And if people want that kind of ambience thing, to I don't know, so they can focus better when they work or whatever, fine. But it's not what the 1,000-year-old art form music should entirely be about.
Yeah.
And I also have I think like jazz or the more sophisticated stuff. It was always for people who wanted something other than the mainstream. Yeah. And at the same time, this was the place where a lot of musical innovation happened and is still happening. So it might not be for everybody, but I'm just 100% positive that there's a part of listeners who want something real, who want something that they can really identify with, something that tells them a story that they haven't heard before in a way they haven't heard it before.
That's right.
Or see it on stage. And I'm so happy to be on this side.
Yeah, me too. Last night I was listening an interview linked to me by you, by Ricky Beato and Ted Gioia. That's Gioia. And this was a really interesting part of the interview. Ted Gioia said that these things go in circles, in 40, 50 years circles, and now as he described, the pop music is going to the direction where a 3-chord song needs 9 composers, and now they're adding some AI into that process, so it's going more into narrow, and everybody is doing the same formula. So he is predicting that the marching music is going to rise, like it was very popular in the 60s and early 70s. The stuff that we both like. So he was saying that this is happening at the moment. Do you think there will be a rise of the marching music in the future?
The marching music?
No, the music in the margin. Marching. No, not marching music. I mean, the German marching music has always been a big thing. Marching music.
I don't know about rise. I mean, Ted is a futurist. That's what he calls himself.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very happy if a person who's much smarter than me and who has done his homework, and he comes from, I think he comes from the financial world, so he's a very analytic person.
And jazz piano also.
And if his predictions go in the direction of my hopes, then I totally want to believe it. Yeah. I mean, if we talk about jazz, and again, the term means so many things that actually doesn't mean anything. I think like jazz to me is just the drawer. You put everything that has no drawer, and it's just an excuse to make new, great, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But if we use the term, I think it has, in the last decades, and probably even before, it was 1% of the music market.
Yeah.
And
was it really 1%? I mean, yeah, okay.
But it's still a lot of people. Again,
I know. Yeah.
And it would surprise me if it would be more than that.
Yeah.
But what I can imagine, I see that with like 20-year-olds that I know, that they get tired from the stuff that's in their phone.
Yeah.
And that is fragmented to 10-second bits that scream at you and want nothing but very, very short span attention.
Yeah.
I mean, will we really spend the rest of our lives doing this? Just this? I mean, I do it all the time. I'm terrible.
Me too.
But is it fulfilling? I don't think so. And really, I mean, it's clear that a lot of listeners of the more sophisticated music are 50 plus, probably even 60 plus.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of exceptions.
Yeah.
And like the niece of my wife, like her two favorite genres of music are K-pop and Wolfpack.
Oh, really?
If you want to put Wolfpack as a genre, and Wolfpack is as retro and as analog as anything can be.
Yeah.
And she tells me, she's like 18. She tells me she wants something real.
Okay.
And I do believe, and I see it all the time.
Yeah.
That people are tired of the noise coming out of their phones.
Yeah. Do you think that the algorithms help jazz?
No. Zero. If you find EST, I mean, if you talk about social media on streaming platforms, I mean, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
On social media, you're competing with all the food videos, with all the cat and dog videos, with all the sexualized content, and you can't beat that.
Yeah.
You just can't beat that. It appeals to instincts that are much stronger than what kind of music do I want to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On streaming services, I mean, people really don't know that much what they're listening to when they just get fed stuff through playlists.
Passive listening.
I mean, sometimes when I finished listening to an album and the music just goes on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hear something, I think, okay, what is this?
Yeah.
But I think the biggest part is through some kind of deeper connection.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not anti-technology.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of downsides to digital music world.
Yeah.
But there's also upsides. You can hear everything everywhere. You can reach listeners in Antarctica if you want to.
Yeah.
I can communicate with American journalists that I've never met.
Yeah.
I don't know if the advantages surpass the disadvantages, but it's also pointless to talk about. It is the way it is. I mean, the technology is there; it's not going away.
Yeah.
But I think, and I see that our listeners and your listeners, they have a deeper connection than some system, some digital thing is suggesting me something.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is how it works. Most people don't consume what they want to consume. They're being told what they want.
Yes.
And then they want it. I mean, I don't want to go too far out, but look at Taylor Swift. Mm-hmm. It's not like a couple of billions of people suddenly think, okay, I want this folk pop singer.
Yeah.
She's a device,
Yeah.
She's some instance, some institution is feeding people that stuff.
Yeah.
Through all channels.
Yeah.
And at some point they want it.
Yeah.
But it's not from within them. They're just it's not a new mechanism, by the way.
Yeah.
It worked similarly with the radio, but not half as effective, of course.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think what we do, and what even the most popular artists in our world do, has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
these things can maybe be one touching point, and I think social media has good sides, streaming services have good sides, but it's not the main reason why people get into it.
Yeah.
It's some kind of real interaction. It's
That's
some kind of closer connection.
That's right, and that's the way it should be. You have a story of a famous violin player you wanted to share. Tell me all about it.
Well, you asked me about anecdotes, and I mean, it was just one of the biggest "what am I doing with my life" moments.
Yeah,
I worked at this festival. It was a jazz and classical music festival, and we had this very, very famous violin player come, and it was just one of the maddest days in my life. It already started with, there's this thing called like backstage and catering riders.
Yeah.
And the rider of the guy, it was a small book.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And that was sent, I think 4 weeks prior to the concert, and included, like the maddest thing was temperature and humidity in the backstage.
Of course.
Of course, the guy played this violin that was worth £5 million.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was the concert was open air, so I was always wondering what is he going to do, with the outside climate. And there was a grand piano for the dressing room on the rider. There was no pianist in the band, just to play with it. And it was also in the countryside in Germany. Like this stuff was incredibly hard to get.
Yeah.
And then and then 2 days before the thing, the crew came and they measured that. They measured the humidity, they measured the temperature. It was summer. It was like 35 degrees outside.
Okay.
And I was already, before that day, I was a wreck. And then the guy came. He looked like a homeless person, more or less. Mm-hmm. And then he came, and he has this bro fist that he shows. I didn't know the gesture. I'm also from and I took the fist and shook it because I was so nervous. But he seemed to be in a good mood. The next thing was there was a European football championship.
Okay.
And I didn't know the guy was such a big football fan. In fact, he bought a big part of Aston Villa, one of his favorite British clubs, and I didn't know. And he just asked, do you care about football? And I said, I couldn't care less. And he was just laughing it off.
Yeah.
And somehow, I mean, we got everything. Like the whole backstage thing must have cost like a 10,000 euro amount.
Yeah.
The fee was insanely high. Everything that preceded was nightmarish. But then also he sat down he didn't touch the piano in backstage. Yeah. He didn't play the violin in the room that was set up to the right temperature. But instead he sat down on the back stairs of the venue. Yeah. And just played solo on the violin. And I was so exhausted. But to hear him at that point was it made up for just to sit more or less next to the guy. Yeah. And the concert was great. And then I also remember there were these 20 bottles of Veuve Clicquot champagne on the rider that he also didn't touch. But he gave it out to the audience on their way home from the backstage door. And I remember my boss standing next to that and seeing that the guy was giving like free champagne paid from our budget to the audience on their way home, and giving them high fives. I think she just wanted to murder him on the spot. And then we had to break everything back down, and it took like 3 a.m. to get all the stuff tore down. And I remember that I drove home with 2 members of the crew. And the next day they told me they tried to talk to me on that ride. Yeah. And I just didn't reply. And I have 0 memories of that drive home. But that was my one contact with true, like rock star
type. Type. Yeah. All right. Well, not all artists are like that, and especially the ones you work with here on ACT. I'm sure. Has the world become a better or worse place during during your lifetime?
I'm 43. I was born in GDR.
Yeah.
So I was born in a like a divided Europe.
Yeah.
I think this is much better.
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate to be able to travel, to live in freedom, to be able to express what I think without big risks.
Yeah. How old were you when the Germany?
9 years.
9 years. Okay.
But,
still remember.
Yeah. I have vivid memories of that, and of course there is more about it afterwards.
Yeah.
So in that respect, the world has certainly become a better place.
Yeah. Well, that's I accept that. What really pisses you off?
I hate the kind of polarization in our world. I think it's really important to be able to listen to opinions other than yourself and trying to think about them.
Yeah.
And not making like putting a person in a drawer only if you disagree to a couple of things that they see differently than you.
Yeah.
I think it poisons our society, and obviously, especially social media is a place where that just puts it like a turbo on that, and I hate that. I think we should be interested in people seeing stuff differently than we do, even if we don't agree with it. And I think we should listen to each other and just generally try to accept that people see stuff differently and not make them our enemies in an instance.
What happens to you after you die?
I'm not religious. Again, born in Eastern Europe, there's it was not much place for religion.
Yeah.
My wife is a theologist.
Yeah.
I envy people for their faith.
Yeah.
I wish I had that. I don't have it.
Yeah.
I think I'll become compost.
Compost! Thank you, Michael. Great to talk to you, and I think you're doing a fantastic job here on ACT, and you are a true music lover. This is one of the fascinating things about you. Every time we meet, we talk about music and new artists you have discovered, and I think that's a rich life. You get so much out of it, being attached to music every day, and that's what you are. So, thanks for doing this, and all the best. Do you have something to add?
Thank you for doing this. I think it's unique. I love you.
Likewise. Yeah.
Follow this guy. He's good.
Follow this guy. And very wise words about the story of the album, and yeah, so much good stuff. So thanks for doing this. Subscribe, and see you when the next episode arrives. Drops. They always drop. That's how we say it. Bye.